We're going to go ahead and get started today. So thank you for joining us. We're so excited for the session to be led by Jamie and Ryan. If you'll see on your tables, there's a QR code for another class we have this week. It's actually coming on Friday. And it'll be a great opportunity to take what you're learning here and kind of put it to test in a low stakes, sample kind of situation where we're going to have a property and then everyone in the class is going to write a sample offer on it. And then our broker, Andrew Ginter, is going to go through all the offers and share some of the pros and cons. So that's a kind of great way to get experience writing a real offer other than and using the skills that you're learning today from Jamie and Ryan. So we're very thankful and excited to have Jamie and Ryan leading this today. And it's Ryan's birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you guys. I'm going to go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Gary. All right, just show of hands really quickly. Who's a brand new agent? Never written an offer before. Okay. All right. And then the rest of you, less than a year or less than a year, more over a year. I think we have a couple. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go over writing offers 101 today. Very basic level. So like Carrie said, if you wanted to come back later in the week, there's a little bit more advanced skill-based training later in the week on actually winning and being more competitive in a multiple offer type situation. But as she mentioned, my name is Jamie. I am the director of sales for the Impact Group. Been also a full-time agent for the past 9 years. Last year closed 23 on top of leading 13 agents, and our team closed 131 deals last year. My favorite thing about real estate is making a difference in others' lives, both my clients as well as the members on my team. My background is in education, so I love to be able to pour into people and help them understand what we're doing. If you have not read The Mountain Is You, it's a fabulous book, kind of like a self-help, overcoming hurdles and things that kind of roadblocks in your life, things like that. It's a great book. And then I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Mike. It's been a long time. He has 3 kids. He's also an agent on our team.
My name's Ryan, and I've been a full-time agent for 7 years. Sold 18 homes last year. And my favorite thing about real estate is the wealth building opportunities and all the different doors that open up for you in this industry. My favorite book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's pretty much what got me into this industry. And I recommend you guys read it. It's like a foundation for wealth building, investing, and it really ties into this career. Robert Kiyosaki, yeah. Yeah, that got me influenced to get my license. And fun facts, I play the drums and I have a twin brother. So it's his birthday too. But I'm a minute older, so I blow the candle out first.
Oh,
I have a twin sister. I'm a minute older.
No kidding.
I hold it against her and
Fraternal or identical?
Nope, not at all. We look completely different.
Wow.
Yep.
That's how it is with my twin too. Wow. All right.
Cool. All right, so go ahead.
All right. So what we'd like to accomplish today is just the importance of a complete and clean offer. We're going to go through all the main line items and I'll give you my recommendations on what I do. And then Jamie's going to tie in some of her thoughts and opinions on that. So you guys can take notes on the offer and how to fill out the purchase agreement line by line. So we'll each go through a page. And if you guys have any specific questions about that page, we'll go into details about that. Go over common mistakes and some recommendations, again, to just help write a stronger offer. And then all the essential documents you're going to want to include with your offer submission. And then the process on submitting the offers and how we follow up.
So everyone should have a copy of a purchase agreement in front of you, as well as an MLS sheet that we're going to kind of use this as a fake offer home that we're using today. We're going to talk about key negotiation points in the offer, though we're not going to get into detail too much because, again, we don't have too much time. We want to make sure you at least know how to fill out the documents. And then, like Ryan said, common mistakes to avoid. So talk about, before we get into that, let's talk about the essential documents that you need to include, as well as where to find them. So if you want to snap pictures, or I don't know if we're sending slides out, we can send slides to everybody, but, so an offer summary is something that, some agents might have in the supplements of the MLS. So when you go to the listing, and if you look at this copy here, you can see a blue hyperlink here that says supplements, and there's 4. This agent has 4 things attached to their listing, which we'll show you in a minute, but sometimes they'll put an offer summary in there that they want you to fill out and submit with the offer. If they don't, both of us highly recommend that you have one of your own, or at least that you write up a summary in your message to the agent, whether it's an email or through a .loop message that you're sending all your documents, just explaining the key points, like your purchase price, your earnest money, your closing date, your title company, whether you're doing inspections or not, the type of financing they have. So just like the key points of the offer is important to put in there. It makes it easier for a listing agent and will make you stand out if you have that and other agents don't have that. So obviously you want to include the purchase agreement. You want to include anything that is in the supplements, which typically is going to be your residential property disclosures, any ABAs that agent might want you to use, the title company that they're affiliated with, the lead-based paint, point of sale, if that's applicable in the city. If there's a certificate and it's finished already, that would probably be in the supplements. If they included any HOA documents like decks and bylaws or rules and regulations from different homeowners associations. And then if it is a rental type situation, or there's a tenant living in the home, you have an investor buying it, they may include lease agreements or rent rolls into their supplements. So anything they have in there, you want to pull into your loop and make sure that your clients have reviewed it and signed or initialed all of those documents. You definitely want a pre-approval letter or proof of funds with all offers. Most listing agents won't even present an offer if it does not have a pre-approval or proof of funds letter along with it. If you have earnest money considerations that need proof of funds, so for example, if say your client is putting $10,000 in earnest money or some larger amount of money than would typically be expected, the listing agent might ask that you show proof of funds for that amount of money. So even if they're using financing and you're submitting a pre-approval letter, you may also need some proof of funds if you have a higher dollar amount of earnest money. You need an agency disclosure, a walkthrough addendum, any home warranty documentation. If it's an FHA or VA finance loan, you need the FHA or VA addendum. Escalation addendums or appraisal gap addendums if you're including those in your offers. Bless you. If you have a home sale contingency or concurrency, there's a document for that. And then other things that you would need in your loop, but you might not necessarily be submitting with your offer to the other side or the other agent, is your how to protect your family from lead document. So you need one of those signed anytime that you have a lead paint disclosure or anything built prior to 1978. It's going to have that signed by your client. The consumer guide, our new buyer agency agreement, which is part of our purchase agreement. We'll go over that. The MLS printout should be in your loop. And then if your client is waiving inspections, I highly recommend that you pull in the inspection waiver document and have them sign that as well.
Yeah, so how to submit offers. So we're all gonna go through .loop. Do you guys have your account set up and everything for the most part? Okay, so I'll go through writing the offer through .loop so you guys can see how I do it and how I put the information in. And we can download the whole thing in PDF to submit an email, but you can submit your offers through .loop directly to the listing agent, directly through a direct email. And I'll typically do both .loop so the agent can edit on their end and they have a hard copy in their email. So we'll show you how to do both. Communication tips as well with the listing agent. The biggest thing is you want to have a relationship with the listing agent. Like you want to put your best foot forward. And I always call right after my showing and I'll talk to the listing agent, say, hey, we had a great showing and my client's very interested. We are most likely going to put an offer together. And I want to stand out to the agent, let them know I'm awesome to work with, we're committed, I'm going to get the job done for them and give them that confidence in us. And what we'll do is, and I'll ask like the tips and recommendations. Is there anything important that the seller is looking for? Because sometimes they might need an extended close date, a sooner close date, or if there's any other offers on the table, you want to strategize the best that you can. So as much information you can gather on the front end is going to help you write the offer. And then, of course, when you submit the offer, you just want to call the agent or send them a text letting them know that, just making sure that they got it and get a confirmed receipt. Then the next step's just, courteous time frame. You want to let the buyer know that the offer was submitted and give them a time frame on when to expect it. Because when you submit that offer, the buyer's gonna be very excited, probably texting you every hour, what's going on? What's going on? So if you could set that expectations with them, that'll help.
I typically say, it's customary to hear back within 24 hours, unless we're in a multiple offer situation and there's a deadline or a highest and best, and they specified already that, we're not going to get back to you till Sunday or Monday or things like that. But like Brian said, if you don't set that expectation, your buyer's going to be just going crazy and bothering you constantly asking for updates.
It will happen.
Yeah.
And
Expiration date of the offer.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I don't, because I'm also a listing agent a lot of times. And when buyer's agents come in with, what Allison's talking about is, say you submit an offer and you say that our offer is only good until noon tomorrow or 6 p.m. tonight or whatever. The purpose on the buyer side of that is to not engage in a multiple offer situation or to have less offers come in and before you're forcing the other hand to respond back to you. But as a listing agent, it doesn't feel good when we're in a very competitive market and everybody knows that that is what we're trying to do, is entice a multiple and bring in more offers. And we've probably already coached our seller on the fact that, we're going to come on the market on this day and probably have multiples by this day. And we'll go out and say, we want highest and best by now. And then we have time to decide. So if you're already coaching your client on this, and then you get somebody who comes in super quickly, maybe your first day on the market, unless that offer is like too good to be true, cash way over ask, or full appraisal gap, no inspection. Like if it's worth it to my client to take it and not hold out, I would consider it. But if you have a client that's writing a standard offer, I would not recommend putting an expiration. It's just going to piss off the listing agent, in my opinion.
And I'm going to say the same thing. Just the last listing I just had, it was the same situation. Somebody got it within 2 hours, wrote an offer 2 hours later, and they put an offer deadline for the next day. But there was 6 more showings set up, and it's just it's up to my seller at the end of the day. And ultimately, it wasn't a slam dunk offer, but that buyer's agent just wanted an answer really quick. Well, our offer's going to expire, and it's like, well, listen, I appreciate it. We appreciate your time and everything. But yeah, the seller wants to entertain and let everyone have an opportunity to get in the house. So it's tough. You feel the pressure, and you just got to do what the seller wants. So do what's in their best interest.
And you're also kind of calling their bluff. Like, are you really backing out if I don't get back to you by noon tomorrow? Because we know you're not. We know you're not.
It's 6 o'clock. If they accept your offer at 7, are you gonna say, never mind? I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So like Ryan said, when I'm talking to my seller, I'm usually telling them like they want this house so bad that they're putting a deadline. Likely if they're one of our best and we go back to them tomorrow and tell them that, they're not going to say, no, we're not interested anymore. There's not much inventory for them to do that. So
Yes. Good. And then, yeah, just communication the entire time with your client, listing agent. What's the best thing you can do throughout the process?
yeah, and I would just be careful on this. I put about the communication cadence with the listing agent on here because listing agents don't want you calling them every hour either, checking on your offer. When are we going to hear back? When are we going to hear back? My clients are getting answers. Well, we all know that. And if you're a listing agent and you're getting calls from 10 agents every couple hours asking you for a decision, you're going to stop answering your phone. And we've all been on the other side of that where agents don't answer their phones. So it is important to stay in communication on behalf of your client and make sure that you let your client know that you've tried to reach out or, you're trying to get back to the agent to find out more information, but you don't want to make it so annoying that the listing agent doesn't want to work with you. So there's just an even balance there. All All right, so I wanted to get through this stuff first so we have time to go through the offer and answer any questions. But does anyone have questions so far about any of what we've said yet?
Yeah, that second slide, if you go back, that was the blueprint. Everything on there is what you, like, that's gonna help you guys out. Just ensure you have a pre-approval letter, proof of funds, most important thing. You're obviously, when you guys have your buyer consultation, you'll have the proof of funds with you, so your buyer's qualified. And that's everything that you're gonna need.
I forgot to mention about be careful with love letters. Yeah, you're gonna ask that, sorry. Big red letters there on a star because do you submit love letters?
Not much.
Yeah, I'm very careful about this now. I used to submit them all the time years ago. But after going to several ethics courses over the years, and learning that we could get into very big trouble with federal law because of fair housing laws, that, you know, if the seller chooses your offer based on things that you put into that letter or photos of this happy family or video clips, which I've heard some agents are submitting of this family sitting in this homeowner's living room, so excited to move into their home. If it's ever found that they chose the offer, well, it is and it isn't, because if they ever find out that their offer was chosen based on any of the protected classes of the fair housing laws, we're all in very big trouble, and it's federal law, so it's no joke. So I really do not submit, I mean, of course, in writing or a video that everyone can prove and have and save. I mean, I do over the phone, that communication piece with the agent, tell them, you know, a little bit about my clients, trying to be careful what I say, but I'll hint at certain things. But I don't put it in writing. So I would just be careful. And you might have clients that ask you for that, like, oh, well, my friend said they wrote up this whole sweet letter, or can we write one up and send it to you? Will you submit it with our offer? That's, I mean, up to everybody's risk level, what you want to do. I usually tell my clients that, you know, we can get in really big trouble with fair housing law if we're doing that. And I'd rather just say it verbally over the phone, so there's nothing in writing, and I'll do my best to let them know what you want me to, but we have to be careful with that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, we used to do them. I mean,
Yeah.
I would just have clients send one over, a picture of their family and their dog, and say, and it's like, it is
So
cute,
bad.
but you're right. It's like you start crossing some boundaries a little bit, and
Mhm.
you can just, yeah.
Yeah, just be careful. Like we said, be careful what you choose, or ask another experienced agent or your broker or team leader or anything like that if you have more questions on that. We just went over. So, okay, let's move on to into what you guys really want to see here. So we have a copy of the MLS sheet here, and we also have dot loop open. Do you want to do the loop, or you want me to do it?
I can do the loop.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can just kind of help
Sure.
guide too, actually. All right, so I mean, you guys can fill out everything out on the purchase agreement in front of you and just kind of take notes on it as we go. And I will upload everything into dot loop so you guys have an understanding of how that works. So first things first. All right, congratulations. Your buyer wants to write an offer on Ridgeberry. So we have the loop open. So I'm just going to start the loop, and we're going to name it 5678 Ridgeberry.
The address should come up. So as Brian typing this, and you can see here, this is, be careful because you might have previous listings, but you want to make sure that you're pulling in the loop for the current listing.
I'm going to double check the number.
3228.
3228. This is it here, yeah. So click that one, and that's gonna, so mine hasn't been working for this, but we'll let it go. But I'll try it if not. But this is just your license number. So yeah, so I would do that because it's going to import everything from the MLS listing right into dot loop and into your offer.
Some groups have this where you can, like, if the agent has their listing set up where they're allowing you to import data, this message will come up. Some do not. So if this comes up, you always want to import data, which just make your life a little bit.
Yes, it will. All right, so that's in here. I'm just gonna make this bigger. All right, so the loops there, and then the template. I'm just gonna go through, I'm not gonna go into the templates yet. Photo and finish. So we just opened up our loop. And so what we're gonna do is, so we have the loop, so now you're gonna reference that slide that we went through. This is where I'm gonna upload the pre-approval letter, proof of funds. We're gonna get a PDF file and drop it in here. And then what we're gonna do is go into the supplements here. So again, we're gonna look for the property disclosure form, the lead-based paint. They have a feature sheet. They have the agency disclosure already filled out. So we're gonna download all of these.
Every document that the agent has put into the supplements, you want to download and bring them into your loop.
So yeah, so I'm gonna just pull them in here. So browse, they're actually all in here. So the agency disclosure, lead-based paint.
Yes.
What is your team's drag? What is he?
Yeah, so he pulled in from the supplements of the MLS any documents that the listing agent provided, which are here. So he downloaded onto his desktop the property disclosure, the lead paint disclosure, a seller home sheet, and then an agency disclosure sheet. So when you are in Dotloop, there's a couple ways you can drag and drop like Brian was doing. You also can browse your computer and go to your desktop, which is where he put them, and then just click them and hit add.
That would
I just did.
the necessary documents that you have to show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that you have to include with your offer.
Because these are everything that you're gonna present to your buyer client. The buyer's gonna sign everything, and these are the documents that are gonna get submitted with your offer.
Nice.
Yep. So these are the three main ones that were included in the MLS, and we're gonna add a couple more here. So now we want the purchase agreement. We want all of our information now. So we're gonna go into templates and KWGM sales packet, because this is a purchase. So you guys can look over the checklist for buyers. That's everything that we had in that one slide. So I'm gonna pull up all those documents that were in this slide, the consumer guide. There's a buyer representation agreement you'll need. Here's a purchase contract. Agency disclosure was already provided by the listing agent. Our ABA with Ohio Real Title, our home warranty document. Your walkthrough addendum. And you'll wanna bring the protect your family from lead-based paint as an informational packet that you'll just wanna provide a copy for your client. So all of these got uploaded into the loop. So we're just gonna focus on the purchase agreement. And if we do have time, we can go through some of these, but these are all the addendums that you're gonna wanna include with your offer when you're submitting it. Yeah, I mean, I'll just
I guess.
I'll just complete it as if I was just gonna do
Okay.
it then, I guess. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna auto it, so we're just gonna do everything by hand then, just to make it easy. But yeah, as you go, you can autofill everything to make it easier, but we're just gonna, just to save some time, we're just gonna go through everything here. So yeah, that's perfect. Okay. All right, so we'll get started on the offer. So line item number one, this is gonna be your client's full name and how they're gonna want it recorded on the deed.
Brian DeLuca's your client today.
I am the buyer today. And then the line number two is the property address. And then you guys can just reference that MLS sheet and just plug the data in. And then on line three is the city, and they're gonna ask for the parcel number. So you're just gonna wanna make sure that you get the accurate parcel number that's on the listing on the MLS sheet. Because if you do mix that number up, you can be writing an offer for a different property. I've heard stories about that happening, so you just wanna make sure that that parcel number is correct.
In this case. Parcel number is right here.
Yeah, the parcel number is right under the
It doesn't-
supplements on the
Oh, yeah, it is on
MLS.
here. Yeah, it's the other blue hyperlink under the supplements there.
So once you have all that information, line items 4 through 11 is touching on everything that's gonna be included with the property. So you're gonna see this is gonna go for all the window treatments, all the appliances. So what you can do is reference the MLS listing.
We don't have it on this listing, so
You-
that's good to
okay.
point out.
So, yeah, not every listing agent is gonna put what's gonna be included with the property, but typically they will write in which appliances are included. And what a good thing, just like our reference point too, I'll go through the MLS listing and I'll go through the photos. And I'll make sure, you know, the refrigerator, microwave, washer, dryer, fireplace tools. So that's what we'll do now. We'll just
Yeah,
kinda
in this
breeze through the
case,
photos.
I would absolutely do that. So typically there'll be a line down right around where the rooms are that'll say appliances and it'll be going across with commas like range, refrigerator, dishwasher, microwave, whatever. In this case, the agent didn't fill those check marks out. So then it's your responsibility to either remember from the showing that you had what appliances were at the home, or hopefully they have thorough pictures. Or sometimes you have to ask the agent what's included. But in this case, like Ryan said, we can see in the kitchen that we see the fireplace. So you want to pay attention to that because you can see there's no glass doors on the fireplace. There's no set of tools or screens. So we're not going to be clicking those boxes because obviously they are not included. But we would want to say that the logs are included and the rack, which is one of the questions in there.
Yeah, because this is your opportunity to request what's gonna stay with the house. You're gonna see the window treatments on the windows. You see the microwave, the range. We have the dishwasher, refrigerator. So when you're going through, so you're gonna see like line 7, it's gonna say, you're gonna see a blank and it says blank controls. I always put all controls. I just put ALL for all, just you want all the garage door openers that go with the property.
Something that's like fan remotes or gas log, gas fireplace remote. So yeah, always just put all there.
Yeah, all, so you're covered with that. And everything that's attached and fixed will remain with the property. And then you have your check boxes for all the appliances. So we're gonna check off the range oven, microwave, refrigerator. There's the dishwasher. And we saw the fireplace. Grates, there's no tools, there's no screen, glass doors. You'll check all existing window treatment. Most buyers want, you know, something covering the windows for now.
Is there fans in there?
If there were ceiling fans, we could skip through a couple photos.
Yep.
Yep,
So you
so
want,
I would select ceiling fans.
and then I already looked through the pictures. There is a washer and dryer in the laundry room. That's another item that you want to make sure is included because of all of the appliances. That's the one that sellers sometimes choose to take with them is their washer and dryer. So if they're in the home during the showing and they're in the photos, you can assume that they're staying, especially with the house already being vacant. Yes. Hi. And
Hi.
you come in. This,
Thank you.
yeah, so that's a
That's
portable air
AC,
conditioning
yeah.
unit. So we'll get down to that with the also included. Yeah,
So you would tie that in, like if your buyer wanted that. And yeah, so and then we're almost to line 12 where it says also included. So this is an opportunity to request anything that may be with the property. For example, there's a riding lawnmower sitting in the garage. You might want to request that and put that in there. That portable AC unit, you know, your buyer might want that. So that's an opportunity to tie that into that line as well.
and I saw in the photos here in the backyard, they have a nice gazebo pergola thing. So I put that in as also included.
Perfect. Yep.
They can counter back that that's not staying, but typically, like I said, with a vacant home and it's in the pictures, it's likely expected to stay. But you also may put things here like a hot tub or a pool table. Sometimes that's a questionable item that they maybe didn't list that was staying, but your client wants it or your client doesn't want it. Pianos are another one where sellers will sometimes leave those behind.
Some of those become an issue where the lenders don't want to see that in there. It's not actually.
Yeah, it can be considered chattel.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to write a separate addendum. Other times it's fine. I say always put it on here at first because you definitely want your buyer to know what you're asking for or not asking for, and you want the seller to know what they're negotiating.
Yeah.
And then if the lender asks later to, can you just throw this on an addendum, then you can change it later.
You might have to do that. But yeah, I like how you said that. Have everything on the front end so the listing agent knows. And you can chime into on this, Jamie, for also included. Sometimes I will put seller to ensure that the property is city point of sale compliant. Like this is the biggest thing. Like there was no, you gotta find the jurisdiction, make sure that the city has a point of sale or not. And you can confirm that with the listing agent. Did they actually have the inspection performed yet? And if so, is there a list of violations or do they have the compliance certificate? If the point of sale was not completed, you're gonna wanna I typically put it on the seller to make sure all the repairs are done, it's compliant with the city, because you need a compliance certificate to transfer title. And a majority of cities in Northeast Ohio do have a point of sale inspection.
Yes. Right here. So we happen to choose Lyndhurst, who does not have a point
Yeah,
of
they
sale
don't have
inspection. So it's not going to be on here. But say you chose Mayfield Heights neighboring city, they definitely have an exterior point of sale inspection. So if the certificate was not already included in the supplements, which if they've already had it done and they're compliant, usually the agent's going to have that as a supplement item. Just going to show the past point of sale certificate from the city, and you can just pull it in here, let your client initial that they saw that it's done. If not, then here we're also included, like Ryan said, is a great place to say home to be city POS compliant prior to title transfer.
Sometimes I use the word property in that home, because sometimes those violations are outside. Like I just had Garfield Heights for an entire driveway.
It won't matter how you word that. Either way, they're not going to get a POS certificate unless the whole thing is met. So you're saying that it is going to be POS compliant prior to transfer. There are some variations where I won't say point of sale compliant. For example, the city of Cleveland, some of you might have been in that class I taught. City of Cleveland does not have point of sale, but they do have city compliance rules that are not called point of sale rules. So I often will put home to be city compliant prior to title transfer on something like that. But our title company offers a PDF list of all of the cities and what their compliance rules are. So if you don't already have that or don't know where to get it, I highly recommend that you either connect with us or Carrie or Ohio Real Title. Janelle would be happy to show anyone anything. But save that list on your desktop, and anytime you're writing an offer, the first thing you should be doing is going in there and checking if the city does have a point of sale compliance requirement.
Yeah, it's a big one on the front end because I've had a case where we get to the closing table and then a point of sale was never done, and that's gonna tie up the deal. So catch everything on the front end.
Yeah.
It just has a little tidbit, if the city has heights in it, most likely it is.
This is true.
True. Yeah. All right, we have a couple questions. So each city, some have them, some don't, like we just said. It's basically like an inspection. So they have city inspectors or building inspectors that will come out. Some of them are exterior only, some do interior, some are much more detailed and destructive for deals like Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights, some of the Bedford ones. Some of them are very strict. And I mean, you'll have like a 60 item repair list. And so if you don't know that ahead of time, you can imagine that that could definitely make a deal fall apart if it comes out 2 days before closing that there's 30 repairs that the seller's saying, I'm not going to fix. So either you take it and you take on the repairs buyer, or back out, I'll go back on the market. So it's important to know that up front. If they have it, if they've done the inspection yet, what are the repairs being required, or is the seller taking those on, or are they asking the buyer to take them on? Yeah, you had a question?
Yeah, so with the point of sale compliance certificate, if it's not already included in the supplements on the listing, do you see pushback from the seller for them getting it compliant?
Sometimes they've done it and tisk on the listing agent that they didn't include that in the supplements or even ask the seller for it, but the seller might have a copy of that. Sometimes they'll just put it in the note, like home is POS compliant. They'll put it in the description or in the broker note. So always want to check that. Or they will say to be point of sale compliant prior to closing, meaning the seller is going to have it all taken care of.
So you kind of look for it in a couple different places.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Read the notes and the broker notes, because that's like the
there.
first place. And they'll even a lot of times say in there, buyer to assume point of sale violations, which means you know right from the get-go that seller's not doing them.
Have you seen a decent amount of pushback from sellers wanting the buyer to get the? Okay.
In the recent market that we've been in, yes, because we're in a strong seller's market and sellers know that they can just say buyer to assume violations and they're still going to get offers. If something's been sitting on the market a while, or it's not in a hot area, or, you know, different things like that, or there's some listing agents who are super proactive. I am myself very proactive when I go into a listing appointment, sharing with them that there is point of sale in your city and that it would be really beneficial for you to have this inspection done before we go on the market. If you're not going to choose to handle all of the violations, at least let's know them and put them out there, because it's very hard to get offers when buyers have no clue what is going to come up on that report.
So if you wanted to create like an as attractive as possible offer, would you suggest your buyer taking on point of sale?
Well, in my opinion, you have to be really careful with that. I mean, I would not do that unless I had the list in front of me and I could see that they were minimal violations, or that the buyer was maybe a contractor or handy or an investor and they had planned that they were just taking on all this stuff and knew how to do it. I mean, if you did that and you don't have this list of what the items are, your buyer could be in some deep doo-doo, because they also have to have in most cities, the violations have to be complete within the first 90 days. And the inspector's going to come back out and check them. And if you've got concrete work, that's $30,000, or waterproofing, or a combination of structural issues, mold, all these things that can come up on there. Your buyer might be coming back after you if they weren't aware of all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, some of the cities make you put the money in escrow,
Mhm.
and it's not always dollar for dollar. There are
Right.
times it's 1.5 times. You know, if you've got a $20,000 inspection of, the POS is 20,000. You have to put 1.5 times 20,000 in an escrow account with the city.
Or sometimes they'll say $5,000 and then your buyer goes to get estimates later and it's 10 or 15 grand worth of work and they are totally shocked. So point of sale is a huge topic to get yourself familiar with and be really careful about, I would say.
I'm gonna just interject one thing that could also be stressful almost at the end of closing situation. In those cities where there are point of sale, most of them also have it where the buyer has to get an occupancy certificate
Mhm.
in order for that title to transfer. The title company needs that. And a lot of times you're like scrambling at the last minute if you're not working with a decent agent that knows that their buyer needs to do that. And many times those buyers have to go in person, sign those documents in front of someone, and they're actually notarized. In Garfield Heights, for example, they notarize them right there in front of the person who's taking occupancy.
Yeah. So we have a lot of like brand new agents who's never even written an offer yet. So we're just touching very high level here. Some of this, I mean, we could go on for hours. We could go on for hours trying to help you guys learn everything, but those are some different classes, and definitely just know that you should, in the first few offers, I would say just pair yourself with somebody who has more experience or someone at the market center or a coach. And make sure, because there's a lot of legalities in these documents, and you just want to make sure that you are helping and representing your buyer to your best ability and don't get into any trouble later. Yeah. Yes. No. So we'll get into that. That's going to come on the next page here. You wouldn't want to put a financing or a home inspection contingency up here where also included. We'll show you where that is in here. So
All right, and so line item 14, not included, is there anything on the property that the buyer doesn't want? For example, there's a large pile of firewood on the porch in the backyard. I would say, my buyer doesn't want that there, please remove firewood prior to title transfer. So again, you can just plug anything on the property you may want removed prior to closing. That's an opportunity to tie it into your agreement.
knowing that the home, according to the walkthrough and the contract, the home is going to be cleaned out and cleared out before transfer. So we're not saying, if they're living in there, you're not going to write like remove your furniture, remove your beds, like
Yeah.
that stuff. Just common knowledge is all going to be removed. The home will be empty, but additional like fixtures or large items or things that you or your client might think, oh, they might end up leaving this behind and just not clean it out, and your client does not want them to do that. That's where you're going to put that. Or like, say they have a blow up pool or an above ground pool and your client wants nothing to do with it. You can ask that the pool not be a part of the deal and it be removed, or a hot tub, or
It's like a refrigerator, a freezer.
yeah, things that don't work, that lawnmowers that look like they're just left behind the garage that don't work anymore, a stack of tires, a bunch of paint cans. Like some people get really specific that they want like everything out. This would be where you would put that.
Place where you put it.
Yeah.
Scrolling down, line 18, secondary offer. We're not gonna get into secondaries, but basically, we're just gonna pass on it.
Yeah. So if you're writing an offer, you should be clicking is not a secondary offer for now.
Secondary.
This is your primary offer.
We're not gonna go into backup offers, so we're gonna say it's not a secondary, and then you're gonna see on line 19, that blank, always put NA. I'd never leave any spaces open. That's just me on the contract. I just put NA for things that aren't applicable.
Well, this one's a date, so you're gonna either, in my opinion, I would delete this date box, which
Ah,
is similar
there you
to
go.
what Ryan's saying. If it's a date, you just delete the date box. If it's a text box, you could put NA.
All right, so you had a conversation with the buyer for the purchase price. We're gonna give them their asking price. We really like this house. Well, I really like this house. So
Bless
I'm
you.
offering full price. So 275 is what we're listed at.
Yeah.
So 275 is what we're gonna offer. That's line 23. And then your earnest money deposit, that's your good faith deposit. And that's line item 28. So it's recommended 1% of the purchase price at least or greater to have a stronger looking offer. Again, there's no exact amount that you have to put down. It's just a recommendation, 1% or greater. The more amount of money you put down, it essentially says you have more skin in the game. You're less likely to back out if you put a stronger number down. So I'm gonna put down $3,000 in earnest money. A little bit over 1% of the purchase price.
And remember, these numbers are all up to your buyer, but it's your job to explain and coach your buyer on what each of these things mean, what is standard and customary, and then what would make us stand out more than standard and customary if we're trying to win. Like what would be a better number to put in there. In certain terms, some buyers are going to feel more comfortable being more aggressive on and less comfortable. Like maybe they'll go higher on price and earnest money, but they don't want to waive inspections. And then you might have others that, want to go a little bit lower on price and different things, but they'll waive inspections. So each term might be different for each buyer, but it's just your job to understand what they are and what they mean for your client and then let them decide.
And then depending on the loan that you have, that's gonna determine what your down payment is gonna be on the loan. I have a conventional loan and I have to put 20% down. So I'm gonna do 20% down of 275. Which is. What's that?
And it's, oh, go ahead. I'll just say.
So my down payment's 55,000. That's 20% down per my loan.
There's a few ways to do that too. You always put your number there.
I do.
So I don't, just because that number can change if you're counter offering back and forth or different, if you're doing an escalation and your price ends up higher. I will either put 20% down, just write 20% down, or, and then my next line would just say balance. Or sometimes, honest to God, I do this often. I just write per lender for the cash down payment and then balance for the rest of the loan. Because, I don't always know what my client's putting down. And as long as I know that they're a conventional buyer, which, you know, is typically stronger than an FHA or VA, then I'll just click conventional and put per lender and balance. And the listing agent doesn't necessarily have to know exactly what their down payment is. And also the listing agent could call the lender and just check on the buyer, on their strength as a buyer. And they might ask the lender, how much are they putting down? And the lender can go through that with them. That's not necessarily something we have to share. So if it says right on your pre-approval letter how much they're putting down, then that's an easy one to put there. But if it doesn't, and it just says it's a conventional pre-approval letter, I typically just put per lender and balance.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, refer back to the for approval letter, because the percentage might be in there, It may not also not be exact numbers either.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Put
you,
that verbiage for them. I think that would be
Yeah,
easy for
so-
you guys.
And that, and I do check that when I'm on the selling side, I do check to see if what they put in there matches the pre-approval letter.
so it's up to you how you want to do that, or you can have a conversation with the lender and ask how they recommend you do it with that each buyer. Sometimes if I have a really strong buyer, like they're more than 50% down and I want to highlight that and make sure that they see that, then I'll put it. But if they're just like standard 20% conventional buyer, I'll just say 20% or per lender.
And I am a conventional buyer. And then line 32, you have an opportunity to ask for seller paid closing costs. We're not gonna dig into that. But ultimately, I'm not gonna ask for any closing costs in this offer.
So you could put NA, you could put a dollar amount, or you could put a percent here. So if you're not asking for anything, you can put NA. If your lender, the buyer's lender has told you they have to have $3,000 towards closing costs or this deal's not gonna work, you could put a straight number in there. It might even say that on their pre-approval letter, like this pre-approval is contingent upon the buyer having $5,000 towards closing costs or 3% towards closing costs or whatever. So if it says that right on there, you can write that in there. Or you can say 3%. Again, there's different amounts that you're allowed to ask for depending on the type of financing you have, and that's getting a little bit deeper, so we won't right now. But I would just recommend that you stay in touch with your buyer's lender when it comes to closing costs and ask them, does the buyer need closing costs? And if so, how much do they need? And that's where you would put it.
And for the financing, we do 5 to 7.
Yeah.
So for financing, so this offer is conditioned upon the buyer making written loan application for the mortgage loan. So we typically do 5 to 7 days is what we put in that box. So that means I have to make sure I do an official loan application with my lender within that time frame, 5 to 7 days.
So I don't know your name in the back, I'm sorry, but you had asked about putting the financing contingency up there. This is where you're gonna see that. So for financing, this is the financing contingency right here. It says that within the first week of going under contract, my buyer's gonna meet with that lender and fill out all their paperwork. And then also,
And then we want a written commitment for that loan, meaning that loan is approved by, I believe, 30 days. So in my closing will be, what do you want to do, 40 days for my closing?
sure, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
30 days is a reasonable amount of time to make sure that the lender has everything they need and the loan goes through its process, appraisal process, and the loan gets approved. So 30 days from today is what you'll want that date to be. So whenever you guys are writing your offer, 30 days from the date you're writing the offer.
When you're saying days, like 5 to 7 days after acceptance, are we talking like calendar days or?
No.
business?
I'm sorry, yes, it's calendar days. So within 1 week, they need to get back with that lender. Now, as an agent, you're staying on top of that, right? So as soon as they go under contract, you're likely getting all this information over to the lender right away. The lender's then gonna reach out to that client within a day or two and say, hey, congrats, I saw you're under contract. Now we need this from you.
Yep.
And the lender's gonna take the ball from there and make sure that they get everything done.
Yeah, on page 5, on line 225, it says the purpose of this agreement, days shall be defined as calendar days.
Oh,
And you are to abide by all the dates in this contract. So like line item 25, earnest money, we'll have 4 days to get our earnest. I know that's just digging deeper into this, but 4 days to get the earnest money, 5 to 7 to get the loan application started. And then you'll have that 30 days on line 36 to get your loan approved.
And then you need initials. Oh, in this case, Brian's only
That would
one.
be-
one buyer. You don't want to leave extra boxes in there or your buyer's gonna fill out both. And then it looks like there's 2 buyers. So however many,
Can you delete a box, cause I always go in
Yeah.
and put no one in there, so no one signs.
That's-
oh, I just
do that.
delete,
You can delete the box?
you hold shift, delete, shift. I delete all boxes that I don't need. Me too.
Clean.
Yeah, I delete every box that I don't need. So like this,
Control
I
delete?
know you hold shift and then delete or shift backspace.
if you click on it, like, there's a little X up there too, that'll delete it.
Where is it? Let me see.
The red X, yeah.
Oh, remove field. So that does it too. Few different ways.
When I came today.
Yeah, I always just hit shift delete on anything I don't need.
No one in the box, but no, so the second, like.
They don't sign it.
Or
Yeah. Yeah, you can delete any extra boxes that you don't need.
Or the one that drives me crazy is the one about residential property disclosure where you have the, they did see it or they didn't see it.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you can delete all those extra initials.
So page 2, again, just make sure you're filling out every box that you can or clean it up. Just the cleaner it is, the more organized it looks. The line 46, closing. So all funds and documents necessary to complete the transaction shall be in the hands of title on or before. So what I do is a day before closing. So here, so my closing date, I know to not confuse you guys.
A typical closing period is 30 to 60 days if there's a loan involved. They're cash, sometimes they'll close in 10, 12, much quicker closings. But when there's a loan involved, it's typically anywhere from 30 to 60 days. Again, we're not getting into how you want to make your offer more competitive, but the more competitive you want your offer, you want to find out what's important to the seller. If they want a faster closing, a longer closing. So all of this is like negotiated items. So we don't exactly know what everyone's closing dates are going to be. This is something that you decide with your buyer and with taking into consideration what the seller wants or needs and also what the lender tells you. Sometimes the lender needs a certain amount of time for the type of loan that they're getting. So for this instance, let's say it was a 30-day, 35-day closing because we did our our loan application.
30 days.
We did loan application done in 30, which is May 21st. So let's just say then our closing is going to be May. Another tip is that we don't like closing on Mondays or Fridays. So I always try to close on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So if we're getting documents in by the 21st, we could close on the 22nd. Or if you want to go into the following week, you could close like Tuesday, the 27th or Wednesday, the 28th. You just want to make sure that your documents, your final loan application is in sooner than your closing, obviously.
Do you keep all those dates the same?
I do, unless
I-
they need
I
possession.
also keep those dates the same.
Yeah.
We're gonna close on the 27th, all the documents ready by the 27th.
And we're gonna get keys, the
Possession
27th.
needs delivery of keys on the 27th, so everything's gonna happen that day.
And again, this can change depending on the situation of the seller. If the seller needs the weekend to move out, then your possession date might be a few days later. You're giving them a couple days to clear everything out. So you won't always have possession be the same day. The listing agent might tell you that that's, something important to the seller, that they need time after closing to get their stuff out of the house. So just be aware of that. But if there's no special needs or anything like that on the seller's end or your buyer's end, then all 3 of those dates can be the same.
And line 54 walkthrough, so I'll want to walk through usually, I'll do 1 to 3 days before closing, that works too. And it's just right before closing, before signing, to ensure the property's in the same condition that you last saw it. You just wanna make sure that there's no broken windows or anything crazy going on.
Water damage from a storm or smoke damage or stuff from when the movers came in and moved stuff out and they dinged up all the walls or the floors. Yeah, anything.
That's what the purpose of this is, to catch that, so we can negotiate one more time before we actually close. Like, hey, can you make sure that these walls are painted before we sign? Or, yeah, it's just an opportunity to catch things.
Yeah.
We'll scroll down, so the next step is the title. So we're gonna wanna work with the title company. We have an affiliated business arrangement with Ohio Real Title here. So that's who I typically work with, and it's ultimately up to the buyer on who they want to choose to work with. If you do have an ABA with Ohio Real Title, you typically have your own escrow agents, own escrow team, and good communication. So it's always a value add to have that. But we're gonna go with the Ohio Real Title, line 67. You'd have an opportunity to put a different title company if you were gonna use somebody else, or just delete the box or any. That's keep it clean. There you go. Prorations, the biggest thing here is the seller. Just to keep it simple, if it was a rental property, a duplex, we would be owed security deposits as a proration at the closing table. I'm not gonna dig into the deepness of this, just know that title will follow the instructions of this contract. The biggest thing you wanna know is line item. It's line 84, the escrow agent shall withhold blank from the seller for the final water and sewer charges. That price, I'll typically do $250 to $350, depending on the price range, location. Is it an investment property? Is it an owner occupant property? Like if it's like an investment, you might want to put a little bit more, because sometimes the water bills aren't paid and you don't want your buyer to be stuck with the bill.
So this is the reason for this line is because of all the utilities, the electric, the gas, those things are tied to the owner's social security number. So if they don't pay those, it's going to follow them as a collection item and screw up their credit. The water and sewer bills are actually only tied to the property address, not to a social security number. So if the seller leaves and doesn't ever pay their final bill, it now gets attached as a lien on the property's taxes, which are now your own buyer's taxes going forward. So your buyer is going to get stuck with any problems that the seller leaves behind in attachment to a water or sewer bill that's not paid. So it's really important that you protect your buyer and ask that the seller leave this specific amount with the title company in escrow until they show proof that their final water sewer bill is paid. And then that amount gets credited back to the seller. So if you represent the seller, you're going to explain to them, like, we're going to have to leave this money, but it's going to come back to you as soon as you show that you've paid your bill. And then when you're talking to your buyer, you're going to tell them, we're putting this in here to protect you, that you don't get stuck with the previous owner's final water sewer bill. And Ryan was mentioning about if it's an investment property or maybe it's vacant and you have a sense that maybe there's a large bill sitting that hasn't been paid. I will typically add a text box here that says any additional water sewer charges beyond the whatever amount I put hold our responsibility. Sorry, I gotta make this smaller.
Maybe not let you put a text in there.
Yeah, these are all just like.
Oh, the seller.
And-
Yeah, we're getting a little into detail, but just be careful with that, because I have had a closing where there was like a $350 additional bill than the hold would cover. And I learned my lesson the hard way and have put this text box on everything since then.
And since you said, I threw that on my buyer's offers too.
Yeah.
But see, I put it in where online, where is it? 91 or 2 there, it says other. I put it in there.
You could. I don't know if it'll all fit,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just need a bigger text box. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
throw it here. But yeah, you always, I mean, when you're writing offers, your job is to protect your buyer. So
Sometimes I just put any water and sewer charges over $250.
Yeah,
Something.
a responsibility of the seller, however you want to word it.
Since you mentioned it, that one time I do that now.
What's that, the box? It says any additional water sewer charges beyond the 250 hold. Because we're putting the 250 hold in line line item 84. That's the standard hold. But if, like we were saying, if you sense that the property's been vacant for a long time and there might be an outstanding bill, we've just learned our lessons that there you might get a surprise, and that's going to protect your buyer. So a value of working with you guys, you're going to flag this on the front end and little value add.
It makes you sound really experienced and knowledgeable when you explain this to your buyer, that like, we're just adding this extra little safety net for you that you don't get stuck with a huge bill if the seller didn't pay it. These little check boxes on line 87, Brian and I were talking beforehand, neither one of us in almost 10 years, I've never used this before, so you probably won't come across it. But these two check boxes you can just leave blank unless you're dealing with agricultural, like farmland. Then you would need to get into whether the buyer or seller is handling recoupments of taxes on that. But likely you won't need this. If you ever do, just ask somebody about it, but you can leave those blank.
And line items 90 through 95, that's what the seller will be paying for their title fees and their closing costs. I've never had to put anything in line 92. I don't know about you.
I've never put anything there either.
So I'll put on
I
A
just
or you just blank it
delete the
out.
box. Occasionally you'll, as a listing agent, make sure that you're reading thoroughly, because someone could sneak in there and say they want the seller to pay the full title, closing fees and all of that. They could just say 100% instead of 1/2. Whereas the contract reads that the seller's paying their half of their fees and the buyer's paying their half of their fees. Some agents will sneak a little verbiage in there saying that the seller's going to pay all of it. So just read that carefully when you're accepting offers.
Line items 96 through 99, again, like Jamie said, that's the buyer's portion of their closing costs with the title fees. I also haven't used anything in line 99 unless you think you have something like that.
I don't. The only thing I do here is if you charge an additional amount for your admin fee, this would be where you would want to change that. This here tells you, letter D, that $249 is going to be paid by the buyer as an administrative fee to Keller Williams. Some agents or teams, or if you have a transaction coordinator and you want to charge more, I'll just shrink this box down and type in whatever amount you're charging. And I just plug it over top of whatever that is. So instead of deleting and creating a new box, I just move that box.
I will do
Yeah.
that too.
I don't put XX there, but I just, everyone might have a different amount that they charge. So I'm not going to go into what we charge, but yeah, no problem. So typically there's a long box, text box that's on this. Let's see if I can grab this. It's usually on this line and it's just a long box. So you can add other things in here. But I usually take that box and just shrink it down and move it up to cover this admin fee, because our team charges a different amount for our admin fee. So you can put in whatever over the $249 that you charge. You can put that there if you want.
Now, line 100, the home warranty. So you can check the MLS listing. The listing agent will either put, is there a warranty included? Yes or no. I'm not sure if it is included on
See
the
if I can find.
You can print it off.
So
So
let's see. Bless you.
Put it on the backside of it.
Oh, I just closed the MLS. So that's great. Hey, Carrie, can you get your MLS back up here? Thanks. I think it got logged out. Oh, did it auto?
It might just, yeah, I think it's like Sarah's login, but.
All right, so 5, 6, 7, 8. So at the bottom of the listing,
So,
it's right here.
yeah, so they are offering a home warranty with this one.
Do we know which one though?
We don't, well, they're Keller Williams office, so my guess is it's APHW, but when you see this, yeah, here we go. So seller offering you should be checking broker notes, sellers offering a home warranty through America's Preferred Home Warranty. Now, my first question on this would be like, why is it not in the supplements? Because if they're offering a warranty, they should already have a signed document and it should be in the supplements. If they don't, then you can either ask for it or you can just fill out your warranty paperwork saying, yes, we want a warranty. And on the contract where we were just talking about, you would fill in what Ryan was just gonna go over. If I could find it. Oh, right here. So,
So they are offering one, so we say will be provided. It was APHW, America's Preferred Home Warranty. And the basic plan's $499. That's the one I want. It's gonna be charged to the seller. They are offering that with the listing.
if they weren't, then it's up to your buyer that they will or won't want one. And we here use APHW, America's Preferred Home Warranty. It's $499, and then you would just click buyer if the buyer's paying for it on their own, if the seller wasn't offering one.
Closing disclosures. So the seller, this one.
Okay, so the first one is always listing, second one's always selling, and so you can see the all capital letters here says seller. So we want the seller's final closing disclosures to go to the listing broker, the listing agent. And then we want the buyer's final closing disclosures to go to the selling broker, which I know sounds confusing, but in this case, the selling broker is the buyer's agent. So you have a listing agent and a selling agent, listing and buying. So your first one is your seller disclosures go to the listing and your buyer disclosures go to the selling broker.
That's always how it's gonna go.
Yes. So the capital letters here say the seller. So the seller's documents are going to the listing broker. And then the next line says the buyer is authorizing their documents to go to the selling broker, which is the buyer's agent. This just means at the end of the deal, when they send out your final Alta or your closing disclosures, that we want the listing agent to get the seller so they can share it with the seller. And we want the buyers to come to the buyer's agent so they can go over it with their buyer.
Review mine before we close.
Yeah. Sure. Yes.
We have to make that decision right then and there.
No, you don't. In fact, I tell my buyers, like, we don't have to commit to this now. I'm almost positive they have either 30 or 60 days even after closing to go back to APHW and say they want to add a warranty. So if they're not going to get it now, or they want to wait until right before closing or after the inspection and see what's with the inspection, they can always add it later.
Inspection. So line item 24. So is this a general rule of thumb? You're gonna want to always recommend a general home inspection for your buyer. It's gonna protect the buyer. It's a inspection contingency. So we make sure that there's no latent defects or any issues that we did not see as we walk through the house. This is an opportunity to catch everything. So we'll do 7 days as a pretty standard window period to get the inspection done. And you're gonna see, we're gonna check the expense of the buyer. It's just pretty much common practice for the buyer to pay for their own home inspection. For sake of,
Yeah, in general, I would say any inspections that you're not doing, make sure you're checking the no. Otherwise, you're gonna have an agent kick this back to you and say you need to mark no and reinitial that you're not doing these other inspections. General is gonna be the most common, and we always say that it should be done within the first 7 days and paid for by the buyer, like Ryan said. Obviously, if the home doesn't have a septic system, you can easily, if they don't have a well, you can easily say no for water potability and well flow rate. Radon is another one that I would say is the second most common after a general inspection. I'm not going to get into what it is right now, but just I would learn what that is so that you can educate your client and see if they want to do that. Mold, I have never done in 10 years. I always tell my clients that the general home inspector is going to be looking for all of these things. They're going to tell you if they see signs of mold. They're going to tell you if they see signs of pests or any other things that we should have looked at. So you're pretty much covered by that general home inspection, but you always want to leave it up to them. So just click no if they're not doing them. I've had one client do lead paint in 10 years, and that was on an investment property in Cleveland where it's required. So they're not, most common is going to be general and radon, sometimes pest. And then this other box down here and this other line here is sometimes questionable. Some agents will put a yes here for other and say that within 10 days, we're allowed to have something else. So that means like, if the general home inspector comes in and sees signs of something else, now my buyer's protected that I have a few extra days to get another contractor or inspector out to look at that. Some agents don't fill in whose expense this is gonna be at because they don't know, if it's a structural issue and it's a major concern and they don't want to say like, yeah, I'll take that on, then sometimes they don't fill that out. But you might have agents kick that back to you and say like, my seller's not covering inspections. So either check mark that the buyer's doing that or you're not having this can go a bunch of different ways. So just be careful on that. But another tip that a lot of agents will use, and I often use, is you have to specify what other means. So any other, there we go. Any other inspections deemed necessary by the home inspector. I've learned to change this and say, recommended instead of deemed necessary,
Too.
because an inspector can say, well, it's not necessary, but I recommend that you do it. So, any other inspections recommended by home inspector, and I usually say upon completion of general inspection, because some agents will use this as like a scapegoat to say, well, I'm not going to check mark all these other inspections, but if I just stick this here, we could have all 10 of them at the same time and they can't say we can't. So I always say after the general inspection's done, if the inspector told us that we should have one, then we have the right to, but we're not just using this to claim that we're doing no other inspections and then bring a radon guy with us and bring a pest guy with us and all those other things.
It's additional protection for your buyer.
Yeah.
So with the wood destroying insects, again, we had an opportunity to do it above. This one on line 140 it's more so specific to an FHA or a VA loan. So your VA loans, the terms might have changed, but previously the seller had to pay for a pest inspection if it was a VA loan. That was the requirement. And I'm pretty sure that had changed, so now buyer can pay for it, or you could still ask the seller to pay for that if you wanted to. But
Yeah, so just know if you have a VA loan, there has to be a pest inspection done. It's a requirement of the bank. So it's up to the buyer if they want to pay for that or they want to ask the seller to. If you're in a competitive offer situation, your buyer's going to want to pay for that. If it's been on the market for 200 days and you're not worried about it and you want to ask the seller to pay for that, that's something you could. But those are kind of negotiating items that you could figure out later.
right.
You don't need to fill anything out there if you're not doing a pest inspection. You just leave buyer seller blank.
So waiver 155, I'm gonna be signing this. And it basically says I elect to waive each professional inspection to which I have not indicated yes to. So all those line items 125 through 132, I said no to all those. So that's being clear, like, hey, I'm waiving my right to have those inspections. And line 158 through 162, I guess we could explain it a little bit. So this is like wrapping things up on the time frame within 3 days of the completion of our last inspection. We'll either remove our inspection contingency and buy the house as is. We'll negotiate price of repairs, or if something major came up that we can't negotiate, we have an opportunity to back out of the contract. So that's just kind of clarifying what your next steps are.
And I will tell you that probably, I don't know how you feel on this. I think 90 or more % of buyers do not read these contracts. They just sign and send it back to you within 5 minutes. So it's our job to really make sure that they understand what they're signing. Like before you send it to them, as you're talking through terms over the phone or in person of what you're going to be filling in on all these lines, you should be explaining like, okay, we're doing a general inspection. Once the inspection's done, we're going to have 3 days to get back to the seller to either move forward as is, ask for repairs or negotiate terms and money or back out. And then they're going to have the same 3 days to get back to us with what they want to do. So don't assume that your clients are reading everything because they're probably not.
It is very true, and if I were you guys, I would recommend actually walking your client through the contract and kind of explaining what I am, like explaining what the earnest money does and time frame. Finance contingency, time frame, closing date, so we know everything, like nothing's getting lost, you reviewed everything, and it's gonna help you guys learn better and also set expectations for the buyer as well. Line 177. So there's an educational pamphlet on lead-based paint, any house built prior to 78. Paint in it. So there was an educational pamphlet. I'm gonna sign yes, I received it. 179 is if I didn't receive it, so we're not gonna fill that out. You're always gonna send it unless it's, again, the house is built 1979 or greater. That's where you're gonna initial line 179.
If they have not seen it yet and they needed to have seen it, then you can put in that, the offer is contingent on my client seeing that within 3 days. So if for some reason the listing agent did not provide you a lead paint or residential property disclosure in the supplements and they say like, it's not filled out yet, I'll get it to you or whatever. You can put in here that they'll have that to you within 3 days or your client can back out of the offer. Typically that doesn't happen too much, but.
Yeah. And then 188, so condition of property, this is referring to the residential property disclosure form. Again, we pulled that out of the supplements as well. It's an Ohio state law requirement to get that completed. I saw it and I reviewed it, so I'm gonna initial that I reviewed it. And then typically you'll reference the property disclosure when the seller signed it, and you would put the date that the seller signed from the form on the purchase agreement here.
Yeah, so you have it
There you go.
saved, you can pull up your property disclosure, you can see that the seller signed on November 4th. So that's the date that's gonna put in here.
And 194 is if, again, the listing agent did not post property disclosure and supplements yet. I'm gonna say I have not received that, and I want to see that form within 3 days, depending on how soon you want to see it, but typically 3 days. And yeah, we'll just shoot down to the addenda. So the addenda is again referencing that slide 2 we looked at. And it's gonna be everything that you're going to be submitting with this purchase agreement. There's gonna be the agency disclosure form, which states who represents who in the transaction. There's gonna be the property disclosure form, the lead-based paint disclosure form. The ABA, there's that affiliated business arrangement disclosure, which says we have a business relationship with Ohio Real Title because we're using them. And the home warranty contract with America's Preferred Home Warranty is being offered. We're gonna be submitting that as well. So along with the purchase agreement, you're gonna complete all these addendas, fill them out. And the buyer will be signing those as well. And all those will be sent over with the purchase agreement.
If you have anything else, obviously, this is a good place to check like, oh yeah, I forgot to do the condo addendum and it's a condo, or it's a home sale contingency and I need that form. So it's important to read through these. If it's an FHA loan, you need an FHA addendum. It will remind you to pull these other forms into your loop and make sure you submit them. Other would be, for example, if you wrote up an escalation addendum, or you wrote up a appraisal gap addendum, or any other like addendums about chattel that we had talked about. You could put like addendum A if you have a separate addendum about something else. But you want everything in here that you want the title company and the lender to keep track of and keep an eye on through the transaction. So it's important to have all of these checked correctly.
And, yeah,
You-
so
Do you fill all this in? I don't.
I'll sign it and put the email. I
Yeah.
won't do anything further than that.
So this is up to you guys. If you want to put your client's email address and their home address and their phone number on this contract, you don't have to. And if you do, I will tell you that other agents on the other side of the deal, if they're not a Keller Williams agent, if they're a Keller Williams agent, they shouldn't be doing this. But if they're not a Keller Williams agent, they will take these and call them orphan clients and throw your client into their database with their information, and they're going to start marketing to them. So if you don't stay in touch with your client until they're ready to sell again, that other agent probably is. So I know that for a fact because our team does this. And a lot of people do. I mean, it's
Okay.
standard practice. Yeah. So if you're not doing that, you should be. If you have an agent from another brokerage that's submitting an offer and they are willing to give up their client's contact info to you, throw them in your database. But on the flip side of that, if you're representing your buyer, I don't share their information with anybody.
Yeah, because I mean, that's a really good recommendation. Don't put that information in when everything is submitted to the title company and the lender after an accepted offer. The title company is gonna ask you for that information. You're gonna share it. So
Just to the title
just to
company.
the title, company, not to the other agent.
Yeah.
Why do we have it? Why don't we just take it off?
Well, some people put it there. I don't know. I just, from a strategic standpoint, I don't.
It's just yeah, I mean, it keeps it, if it was completed, title has everything they need.
Yeah, title.
Moves a step for the title company if we put it there. But if we don't, title has to say, what's the email, what's the address, what's the phone number?
Yeah.
But like she's saying, we can go after that client a year or two down the road, check in, how's things going? And you
I'm the
know,
one that sold you the house,
their
you know.
vision.
I'd be great to sell it again for you if you are looking for an agent in the future. So just be careful what information you share there.
And I will complete this
All of
bottom
this.
section, yeah.
Yes. Like we talked about in the beginning with making your offer as complete and full as possible. This is one of those things where there's a lot of agents that get lazy here at the end. They wrote up their whole offer and then they don't fill this in. And it's a pain in the butt because it has to be filled in. So either you're going to do it or the other agent's going to do it. And if you want your offer to stand out and show that you're going above and beyond, fill it all in. So you're the selling agent. Obviously, some of your stuff might auto-populate or you're going to fill in your name, your license number, phone, and email. But also go into the MLS and grab the agent's information from down here. You have it all. So it's just a matter of, are you going to take that extra step to put in their name, phone number, email address, their brokerage name, their brokerage license number, their brokerage phone number, all the information's in here. So to go that extra above and beyond and well, it's here. So you click
Yeah,
the
you just click
brokerage,
everything.
you could copy and paste their address from right here.
I always do it again, everything's completed, it shows you took the time to.
Yeah. Yeah, if you click the brokerage, all their info's in here.
Usually go through the other thing that says roster, and I.
Oh, no, it's right there.
You got a
Just-
couple good things.
Yes.
Today,
Some offer
put my
hacks,
time down right now.
There you go.
offer hacks.
Yeah,
It's offer hacks, save 10 seconds here and 10 seconds there.
that's true. So,
Almost done.
yeah, the last page of our agreement now is our buyer agency, exclusive buyer agency agreement. It talks about the commissions that you have agreed to with your client. Again, fill it all in properly, put the listing agent's info, the seller's name, which you have from their property disclosures or their agency disclosure that they've already signed. So put the seller's name, put the listing brokerage, obviously your client's name and your own brokerage goes here. So that should always say KWGM, property address, and then I'm gonna go over this.
Yeah, so for line item 12, seller agrees to pay. It's up to you if you want to have the conversation with the listing agent. Ask, are they offering any commission towards the buyer's agent? Or it's up to you guys if you do that, or you'll just do your standard 3-2, 3% on the first 100,000, 2% on the remainder. That was the standard buyer's agent's commission before the settlement. But I mean, yeah, you can put in whatever.
You can put whatever you want, whatever your commission is that you charge. And also keep in mind what your client already has signed on their buyer agency agreement when you show the property, because they've already committed that you get paid X% for your services. So that's where that number comes back into play here. So this is so not true. And I'm doing this on purpose because I don't want to share, everyone can choose their own amounts. But I'm totally pick your random number. Say I charge 30%, and you don't, but just so that we're not picking a number here. Say that on my buyer's agreement, I charge 30% for my fee. We need to combine, make a total of that 30% here. So either my buyer is paying a full 30% because the seller's not paying anything, and my buyer already signed a buyer's agreement saying that I'm making 30%. Wouldn't that be nice? Or the seller, the listing agent has told you, well, the seller already is agreeing to pay half of the commission. So then that means that they're paying 15% of purchase price, blah, 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 and my client's paying 15%. So whatever your number, your total is that was agreed to on your buyer's agency agreement should be here. And then it's getting split between the seller and the buyer somehow. Either the seller's paying the full thing, buyer's paying the full thing, or they're splitting it some way. Does that make sense? I know these numbers don't make sense, but we're not really allowed to share what
Yeah, it's
what we charge.
Question charge, whatever your fee is, just make sure it's broken down, who's paying what, and that's gonna be your breakdown. And the buyer agrees to pay, some agents do tie in that admin fee. Do you put that there too, Jamie? I've had agents.
Yeah.
that put it there, what is it, line item? 98, where there's that additional buyer agent commission.
The 249.
Yeah, that 249, whatever that
Yeah.
number is for you in that contract, you'd also plug that number to.
You can, but know that you're protected, that if you don't, it's already in the purchase agreement. It says the buyer owes the 249 commission, so you don't have to write it again here. I know some people do. Some people will say like, okay, the seller's paying, and again, it could be any percent. Let's say the seller's paying 5%. And then my buyer's only paying that 249. So some people will put it here again as another reminder that the buyer's paying that fee. And then your total is 5% plus 249. Whatever you put, just make sure that it all adds up. And I would be careful with putting dollar amounts. It can change. And also when you're putting percents, I would say percent of purchase price, because your purchase price can change if you're negotiating back and forth or having an escalation. You don't want to say like percent of 200,000, because then if your offer changes, you have to change this again and get it re-signed again. So it's a percent of the purchase price is what I would recommend you put here. And then you just want to get everybody's signatures, including your own. Be aware that because this is part of the purchase agreement pages, if you sign this and then you go back and change something in the purchase agreement, it's going to erase the signature. So you might have to just sign it again before you send it or submit it. We just dumped a ton of information on you guys. I wish we had like hours to go over everything because
I
we
know.
could. But do you have questions? Any questions or things that have come up for you that you need advice on, or? Did you say pest? So if you're not doing a pest inspection, you can leave those blank. If you're doing one, either your buyer's paying for it or you're asking the seller to pay for it, and that's what you would fill out here. But that means that up here, your pest inspection should say yes, and that it's going to be done within like 7 days or 10 days or whatever you're putting there. So, real quick, I would say practice. Mock offers are super important. Just pick a property in the MLS and use yourself as the buyer and write offers. Just pick a bunch of properties and start writing. We have our new agents write 3 to 5 mock offers before they're even allowed to have leads. So it's really important that you know how to write an offer and explain all of the terms of the offer. You don't ever want it coming back on you that like the buyer didn't know what something meant and they agreed to something. Script practicing, talking to your buyer on the phone or in person and talking through the contract and what the terms all mean. If you have a client ask you like, what is earnest money? You better be able to explain it. Yeah.
No, I 247 to 222. So do you have to put some information in? You put the name and the date.
Well, the seller, that's the listing agent's job.
Okay. Okay.
So I will put the print name of them, but the listing agent has to do their signature and the listing agent will decide if they want to fill in their client's email. And usually when they see that you didn't, they probably won't fill all that in, but you never know.
Just wanted to say, I was reviewing offers for a listing that I had posted, listed last week. And one of the offers came back and they had a separate walkthrough addendum. This agent put the wrong address.
Mm,
You put the wrong city. in the
Ooh.
zip code.
yeah.
And then in the purchase agreement, he printed the names of the seller and they were people, I have no idea who these sellers are. My seller's last name was Gervasi and he put somebody named Bull.
Mm,
So I would just say,
be careful.
like, make sure all your information is correct.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a multiple and you get that and you get an offer like we're talking about that's fully filled in and fully accurate, like you're gonna be telling your client, we would much prefer to work with this agent and this client. So we want to be those agents who are accurate and filling everything out properly and not just throwing together some junk offer, because it does stand out and it does make a difference when you get an offer from an agent who does it correctly and one who does not.
Or there's something
Yeah.
wrong. You just don't, you get the sense you don't want to work with that agent.
Yep.
Mhm.
Right?
A long way.
Yeah. So, and then also just continue to come to classes, continue to go to the social events, the different things that the Market Center offers, as well as other agent get-togethers with other brokerages. I would say the more agents that you know and that know you, the better chance you have of getting your offers accepted and people wanting to work with you. So know that you always represent yourself and your business when you're out and about or on social media, and agents are watching that kind of stuff. And you want to be somebody that others want to work with. Yeah. All right. Well, Ryan and I are always available if anyone ever has questions or needs help. Look us up. We're always here to help.
You said we didn't have to fill out 241, 252, whatever, the 270 something like that. Which is on page 5 or 6. Don't you need their signature?
The only thing I put there is their
Yeah,
signature.
just the signature.
Okay.
I don't fill in their personal, like their email, their phone number, their address. 'Cause I don't need to share that with anybody. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to put the signature.
Box.
Right,
Put the place for it.
right.
Mhm.
But you saying print the name too and the signature or just go with the signature?
I would
Print the name.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, whatever the line is.
I was just thinking, you're not doing
Oh, there
It-
was,
it's
there
not.
was.
It's just a signature.
There was.
that.
Yeah.
So signature
On the last page, the new buyer agency agreement, that page does have a print box and a signature box. So
Okay.
on there, I print it and then they sign. But I try not to give out their personal information because I know other agents are gonna take it.
Which I want that, I mean, I agree with that, and I want to do that too. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we do get a signature.
Of course. Of course, yes. Yeah. Sure, I'm glad it was helpful. I do recommend you come to those other classes later in the week, because they're gonna get more into detail on like it's competitive and winning and multiple. We didn't have time to get into all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.